So this is the second video we're going to be working on cash flow. Just a reminder, the job is to help Larry understand why there's no cash, what's the right profit expectation to have, and what's the right cash expectation to have. And is this business doomed, or is it going to turn around, and if so, when? So in the prior video, we talked about how Larry originally thought there was going to be $26,000 in profit every month, and therefore $26,000 in his checking account. And of course, that wasn't true. And we figured that the profit expectation should be closer to $14,000, even though that won't be cash, but over the long haul, cash should approximate accrual income, even though accrual is smoothed over the period of activity as opposed to when the transactions are specifically settled in cash. But now we actually need to give him an idea, give Larry an idea of the cash expectations. And so let's go ahead and set that up. And I'm going to start by copying some of these lines here, so I'm going to have to retype them all. I'll probably play around with them a little bit. Alright, so we already know January and February. I think a year is probably a pretty good span of time. Let's go ahead and work on 1 year of cash flow projections. So we have actual for the first 2 months, and then the rest of the months will be projected. So now this is cash flow. This is not accrual. So we didn't receive any receipts for sales in January. And then, of course, in the cash flow, we won't have cost of goods sold, which is expensing only what was used up, but we will have purchases, and those purchases will happen periodically. You know, we have to purchase in batches of thousands, so we'll purchase 1,000, and we won't have to make another purchase for a little while till we think 1,000 is going to be depleted. So let's put our unit sales assumption in here. We'll put actual in here. And you can assume, I'm going to just make them all 202. You can assume something else if you want, but I wouldn't assume better than what they're doing now, because your client has just had a big disappointment. And when your client has had somebody that's given them a rosy picture and they've been disappointed, you don't want to make that same mistake again. So I would project either a 202 or something less than 202, or put a percent on the input sheet and let them play with the percent of 202 and start off with a 90%, whatever you want, and then tell Larry he can change the percents and see what happens to the activity here if he starts going down and down on the units. Okay, so in terms of outflows, so that's inflows. Well, I guess we would also have loans would be an inflow, so I guess we'll put that in there. And then for outflows, we would have purchases of locators, cell phone service, occupancy, website, that would be our payroll. This will be what's going on in the American Express. Dealer commission, depreciation is not a cash flow item. We won't need that. Warranty is not a cash flow item. We haven't had any warranty claims. I suppose at some point they would start occurring. Hopefully not in the first year. Supplies. All right. So I don't know if we'll have some others, but then we would have sort of net change in cash for the period. And then ending cash. All right, format these all to be dollars, and so everything will look professional. All right, January, we did have a loan. What was it? inflow, and then there was no purchase of locators. Alright, so I didn't pay for that till February. There was no dealer commission. There were some supplies. And we're going to know this is correct if we get an ending balance of 15, because that's what the actual checkbook was. When we started with 0, so plus that. And as we go here, we plus the prior month plus the change in the month. So this will be the change plus whatever was prior. That will be the new ending. All right, so that was January. Let's put in February. Now, February, we did have some deposits. So let's put what the deposits were. Okay, and we can make these net of commission if we want. And then we don't have to have a separate line for commission. That's up to you. You can certainly do it either way. All right, and we did get some monitoring, not as much as we thought. We got another loan too, right? Maybe another 22,000. And then, now we did purchase some locators in February, so let's get that in there. Okay, for the landlord. And we did pay payroll. And we did pay that American Express, which was January's, but we did pay it in February. We didn't have any supplies in February. Let's see if this works now. Yeah, 429, so we have everything in there. Okay, so that's actual cash. Now, the question is, what do we expect in the future? So we have to make some reasonable assumptions. So let's start with locators. So this will be, we can assume, well, let's not assume any price change, although you could assume that, and if you do, then put the assumption on the input tab and refer to it and tell your client about it so your client can change the assumption. But let's just assume that it's going to be units sold times the sales price in the original assumption. All right, and it's going to be net of commission, so minus or times 1 minus, so we just want 85% of it. And so there we go. Okay, so we're just going to assume that revenue is going to be the same every single month. Okay, why did they do that? And that is because that I didn't lock down my relative reference to be an absolute reference, so this E25 floated across the screen, and so I can lock it by putting the $ sign in there, and now I can drag it across and it will. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Oh, I also have to lock down the price. Okay, both the price and the 15% need to be absolute references. Okay, very fine. And then the question is, do you want to assume, back here at the checkbook, do you want to assume that only 51 out of each 200, only about a fourth of your customers are going to subscribe to the report monitoring? I guess that would be a conservative assumption. You can make a different assumption. Just be sure to tell Larry what you're assuming. Here I'm just going to assume that that's all we're going to get is the 51, because that's conservative, and I'm concerned that my client has been given too optimistic, the amounts that are too optimistic, and so I don't want to make that mistake. Let's see. I don't know if we need any more loans. Let's leave that go for right now. All right, we bought 1,000 locators. We paid for 1,000. I guess we bought them in January. So when will that? So I guess we'll need to buy another batch in early May. And so why don't we assume that every other month we buy a batch, something like that. They might be spaced that you could maybe wait till December. It might be. We'll just go with that. Cell phone service. Now, this is $8 a piece times the locator. So This was for 202. In February, it would be this plus this minus this month's times the $8 cell phone. And let's mark down that reference. I think that will make it grow appropriately. Yeah, that looks like it's working okay. Let's just assume that this ongoing release and that rent is going to be the same. No reason to think payroll is going to change anytime soon, so let's not give anybody a raise for the first year. More together on that. Let's make it minus the 202 times that 9, just in case Larry plays with this. And oh, the epoxy is in there. What was the epoxy cost? $5. Okay, that's okay. Okay. All right, now it's actually a live models where okay, what did I not mark there? Okay, what did I okay? Let's mark these down. It's hard to know what to assume about supplies. You could put something in here if you wanted. So what is it, after looking at the full year, what is it that you're thinking from this client's point of view? Something happens in March and it continues. You probably can see that in the months where you replenish inventory, the month looks very different than those months where you don't have to buy a new batch of units. So that's a reasonable cash flow projection. You can make other assumptions. You can make different assumptions about the monitoring if you like. You can make different assumptions about the units sold. You can assume the supplies are going to continue at some level. That's those would all be reasonable. Anytime you make an assumption, of course, put it over here and color it and tell your client they can play with it and that the model will adjust based on that assumption. So now what you want to do is take this information and digest it and explain to your client, going back to the dilemma, what can they expect in terms of cash flow? What can they expect in terms of profits? Will they always be dramatically different? Will they be able to repay the loan? If so, when? And other things you think might be on their mind. Have fun. I look forward to seeing your work.